Thursday, April 17th, 2025, Wilton Board of Education regular meeting to order. Has everyone had a chance to look at the agenda?
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion.
Thank you, Pat. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Pam. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Public comment. The board has set aside time at the beginning and end of regular meetings for public comments for members of the public to share their views on matters involving the Wilton Public Schools and to help inform the board's decisions on such matters. 2 minutes will be allotted to each speaker and a maximum of 15 minutes to any one subject. For the record, please also give your name and address. The board considers the views of citizens in its deliberations and welcomes and appreciates public comment. The board listens to public comment thoughtfully and with interest. The board, however, generally does not respond to public comment during board meetings by offering commentary or answering questions. The board also invites commentators and the public to contact the board or the superintendent directly with any specific questions or comments. The board, through the chair and the superintendent, may respond to questions and comments offered during public comment or shared directly. And in responding, may also direct members of the public to the appropriate staff member for a response. Are there comments from the public? None online, none in the room. Consent agenda. Has everyone had a chance to look at the consent agenda? Yes. It contains the regular meeting minutes from April 3rd, the governance meeting of April 3rd, and the executive session from April 3rd. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Thank you, Lori. Is there a second? Thank you, Nicola. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Board chair's report. Don't have any formal remarks prepared tonight. I just would like to say, oh my goodness, tomorrow's spring break and this year is just
Fine.
Here we go. But continue to, be in the schools and walk around the district and just be, amazed and awed about all that's being done from little people to big people. And the work that's being put in by our staff is just extraordinary. And as we wake up to, graduation in a minute on a lovely sunny day in June, I just wanted to wish everybody a restful and restorative break. And thank everybody for the final push towards the end of the year.
Yeah, we'll be here before you know it.
Yeah.
So just to build on this comment, really great week this week. Middlebrook had its World Language Week, and so that a number of cool events. One was the Top Chef event that's been around for a long time. I don't know if you got over there, but I think there was something like 87 participants, and the food's always, ridiculously delicious, and the sounds like kids and staff had just an amazing time. This week here at the high school was the festival, which is a combination of world language and arts, and so there were activities across the entire week. We had, musicians representing various genres. In yesterday, 2 days ago, there was an event down in the Zellner called Walk in My Shoes. And so a number of the student clubs got together and put this morning on. And so they provided games and activities to kind of help, just teach their peers about their, respective backgrounds. And so really, really well attended, really well organized. It was just a tremendous opportunity. And then we also this week had the appellate court here on site. And so they came in and took over the Clune, and they tried 2 cases. And so all of our civics classes got to come and, see the judicial branch in action. I'm told that 2 of the 3 judges are Wilton High School alumni. Nicola was there, so maybe you probably know more than
So
I do.
it's Judge Moll and Judge Suarez are both Wilton High School graduates.
Yep.
How cool is that?
It was
That's
awesome.
great,
So, I
yeah.
mean, you like, what do you think? It was unbelievable.
Yeah, it was dense. Yeah, I didn't hear the before they started. I believe the judges introduced themselves and spoke to the kids about what they were going to hear. I missed that bit, so I was trying to catch up and understand in real time what they were talking about. So they were appealing points of law and not like, and it was very
I think dense is a
interesting.
good word, yeah, and that, like, I ran into Nicolette, I came in late too for the first case, and they were arguing about double jeopardy, which is a key point in the law. And so I thought that was fascinating
Yeah.
for our students to see that unfold in real time and hear the corresponding arguments and then to listen to the judges respond.
I've never heard that when I walked in, when we had to do all rise when the judges walked in, and I've never heard that many kids in the Clune Center be so quiet.
Yeah, so it was great. So just to summarize, great week to end, what's been a really strong school year. And, we're all, I speak on behalf of our entire staff, looking forward to a few days off.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Financial report. Layla.
So at this point of the year, I think we're in pretty good shape. We're starting to close out anything that we can. Kevin sent out a memo to all of the administrators this week, and I've been working with the secretaries so that we can really get a good idea of what's left. What expenses we might have. We're just continuing to monitor things. The van for the Community Steps program's been received. I have the inspection scheduled for Monday morning. And then we have to get a special registration to transport students. So we should have that within the next week or two. We have an appointment for May 8th, but I'm trying to get it earlier. The driver's been hired. So once we have the registration in place, we'll be ready to roll. So that's pretty exciting. Yeah.
Great, good fun.
The insurance claim with Kerma from the flood damage at the Cider Mill Gym has been closed. The total came to, Kerma paid a little over 300,000. We ended up paying about 33,000 total, the $10,000 deductible, and then the extra for the gym floor. The fire claim is close to being ready to be closed. So we're hoping to have that finalized within the next month or so. And that one's going to end up being about 250,000 total, and we'll pay our $10,000 deductible, but Kerma did cover everything else on that. So that's kind of where things are at.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
And those classrooms from the fire, almost everything now is kind of like back online and.
Yeah, it took
Yeah.
forever to get the cabinetry in. And so, but those were installed at this point, and there were some like finishes that needed to be added,
Okay.
but they were working their way through it.
Yeah, and then there's a few small things for replacement that we got kind of late in the
Mhm.
game. So we're just finalizing those things and we'll finish it up with Kerma.
And that process has been really smooth with them. You're happy.
They've been
Yes.
very, very good to
What
deal
a
with.
refreshing change.
Yeah,
Excellent.
yeah.
And just out of curiosity, is it $10,000 deductible on all our, on almost all incidents or claims about that?
Don't quote me
Okay.
on that because I have to look at the policy.
Yeah. But normally, like if it's something like this where it's a building issue, it would be
Yeah,
10,000. It's always gonna be 10,000.
Thank you. Any other questions?
No, thank you. And we didn't have to freeze the budget.
School year's not over yet.
Not
Not done
really.
yet, but we're trying really, really hard. That was the goal this year,
Yeah.
was not to have to
We're so
freeze the
close.
budget.
Didn't Savet bring us a check from the state? That was the reason for.
You're not here for any reason. besides money.
On the finance committee, no one gave me a checkbook though.
Well, that could segue us then into Savet Constantine, our regional representative is here, and we're going to have a state representative and legislative update. So thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. I think I know most everyone here. It's been a while though. So hello. As you know, we are more than midway through session. We've education, energy and technology, they've all closed. Most of the committees have closed. They've sent their bills off to be discussed before they come to the floor. And finance, we're just wrapping up, and special ed will be presenting their final bill, actually their first bill, but their big bill on how to fund special ed on Monday. You got the email, 63 pages of a bill.
Right here.
Hopefully you printed double sided, right?
I did for double-sided, stop it.
I actually have not printed it out yet.
I'll make a copy for you.
But, overall, so I sit on 3 different committees: energy and technology, education, and finance, revenue and bonding. And not so much on the energy, but between finance and education, obviously, there's a lot of back and forth. But basically, I feel that up at the legislature, we're looking at kind of 3 overarching themes when it comes to our children and education. One would be early childhood care and preschool. The other one would be kind of helping our students navigate this current world. And the third one would be how we are funding our schools, particularly a focus on underfunded special education, which has been an increasing cost for all of our districts, for the state. Way back when, let's say we were 15%, 17%, our, districts up to 20, 23% of their students in special education. So, it's something that we all need to address because of increasing costs. And we heard a lot of testimony from everybody as to how to deal with this. I know input's been asked for from school districts, from major players, from parents, in order to slowly improve. I mean, we'd love to do it fast, but each step, making steps to improve our system. But first on early childhood care, there's 2 bills, 5003, which is the main one from the House, SB 1 from the Senate. I'll leave that for Cece to discuss when we both come back next time. And then kind of on helping our schools navigate, which I know has been kind of a priority for Wilton for many, many years, at least more than 14 years. How long have you been here, Kevin?
11.
11, so definitely 11 years, But, a lot of it is with kind of the new issues that our kids are encountering, not just social media, smartphones. We have a bill on trying to get schools to come up with a policy on the use of smartphones in schools, because you see the effect. You guys are probably one of the
Absolutely.
leaders in limiting the use of smartphones, and seeing tremendous results as our other school districts. Crisis response drills, ever since Newtown, a lot, we all have these crisis response drills, but a lot of them have been traumatizing to kids because more than likely kids are not going to be in a real situation like that, thankfully, but we still need to prepare. But a lot of the kids, particularly the young ones, are getting traumatized just by the kind of real case scenarios that they do. So, Moms Demand Action, Connecticut Against Gun Violence school districts, they've all been saying like, can we have trauma-informed crisis response drills so teachers and students can be prepared, but without inflicting further mental damage onto our kids. The other one would be, actually, and I don't know if you guys do this. I know we have a very strong civics education here that we are all proud of. But one of our favorite bills, priority for our own Secretary of State, Stephanie Thomas, who was our representative 3 people ago now, is HB 7009. It is establishing the Connecticut State Seal for Civics Education and Responsibility, civics education and engagement. And that requires, much like the seals for foreign language that I know you guys have had for quite a while, kind of demonstrated work in civic engagement, extracurricular in school, and as a reward for students who really put in the effort to, like this, your appellate court that you had, the things that are important for them to learn, and be a productive member of society when they graduate, which I know is part of the portrait of the graduate. So, that's one thing. And then on the governor's side, obviously, this is more of a statewide, would be his priority of reaching disconnected youth. And I think that's something as a state that we should all want to make sure that we don't lose kids in the system, that not only we make sure they're educated, but involved in schools and their societies so that they can have productive lives when they leave school too. And actually, on one of these, so I was talking about the cross section between some of the committees, and an interesting one that I learned yesterday on finance when we were hearing the new updated an act concerning the regulation of cigarettes, tobacco, and electronic nicotine delivery systems. Well, there's a new one, Zyn, and I don't know if you guys have heard Zinnies. I learned all this
We
yesterday.
made sure our, drug policy
Exactly.
included,
What is
Well,
that?
tobacco-less products like.
So
I have no idea what
it's
that
a
is.
nicotine product, but it doesn't actually fall under the current definition of tobacco and nicotine, electric nicotine, because it's a pouch that delivers nicotine. You put it under your tongue and it delivers nicotine, flavored nicotine, straight into your blood system.
Nice.
So, but anyway, this one actually doesn't touch Zyn or Zinnies. Huge, by the way, 60% increase in sales in 1 year. So $1.8 billion product sales.
And where can you
And
buy
it
it?
just, everywhere you can buy, yeah. But, it's something that kids might be using, it gives them that kind of, I guess, more than caffeine, but it's unobtrusive. But it kind of gives them that kick to either stay awake or power through and, without being chewing tobacco or a jewel,
So it just sits under your tongue
yeah, I think
and
so.
it just dissolves?
Just dissolves.
Well,
It's addictive.
the pouches aren't dissolvable, like you'll
Oh,
see
yeah, yeah.
them every now and again, like if
Mhm.
you kind of walk the sports fields, you'll see like those white little, they're kind of rectangular, there's in pouches.
So they
it's like
spit those out at once it's dissolved?
I can't tell you how it works, but you find them on the ground.
Wow.
Yeah,
Obviously addictive.
Again, I think your point's a good one, it's kind of one more product that needs to be monitored, and kids have access to these things that's, far too easy.
Gee.
and this one's very unobtrusive. It's
Yeah.
not like a vape,
Yeah.
you can slip it in and that's it, so. But it's just one more thing that you guys have on your plate, one more thing that, testimony that came in yesterday from the two chairs of public health was, we need to expand this act to anything containing nicotine. I don't know if that's happening this year, but it's a valid point. Because it does affect our kids, it does affect their long-term health, so, Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up.
I'm glad you did. I had no idea.
And then the other one obviously is the bill I emailed you about today that came out today, HB 7277. And it's really looking to, actually, I don't have the name of the bill.
An
What
act
was it?
concerning the provision of special.
Oh, special
education.
Yep. So it's a very wide-ranging bill. We're hearing testimony on it for the first time, or the Select Committee for Special Education is hearing testimony for the first time on this bill on Monday. We're interested in getting everybody's input, parents, school districts, interested industry players, I guess. We'll hear from them again. And it's really trying to look at all the different issues our school districts and parents are encountering in the area of special ed, and how do we fund it? I can briefly go over, this was about half the day, to put this together. It was 63 pages to read. Another half my day was on finance, so.
I look forward to a full read in the next couple of
Yeah.
days, so.
We'll definitely
And
all
the
go through it.
summary, I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I did have a longer summary, but I sent the main points that affect districts like ours. But obviously, since we're in Wilton, that will affect Wilton, and that we've spoken about with Kevin and other, superintendents in this area. One is that OPM, the Office of Policy Management, will study and address special education costs. And, for outplacement by charging entities, we know the skyrocketing costs by outplacement entities are, whether they're mid-year or they've been going up much faster than the rate of inflation, regardless of the amount of kids so they'll be taking a look at that. So hopefully we'll be able to come to some sort of reasonable working relationship where costs can be under control, so you're not left for unexpected costs. An establishment of the special education offset grant, similar to the ECS formula, but outside of ECS, paid direct to districts upfront for the year. You might like that. Establishment of a special ed transportation fund grant to reimburse districts for special education transportation with a total fund of up to $50 million a year. Obviously for the full state. Establishment of an SDE grant to facilitate development of in-district special education programs. I know we're far ahead of it, thanks to Kevin. But this will help other towns try to bring things in-house. Allowing school construction bonding for special education renovation, capital improvements, or expansion of existing buildings. And I believe that's new, correct? Because
That's brand new.
yeah. So I mean, you know, these are all different ways of trying to chip away at all the extra costs that come under your budget that, you know, you can raise your budget 0%, 2%, 4% this year. But everything has to come under that. So this is just some of the ways that the state will try to help. Let's see what else. Review of teacher and paraprofessional training, giving and certification processes, because we all know we need more teachers in the system. We need more paraprofessionals in the system. And particularly when it comes to special ed education, we need more teachers in particular programs. Because, you know, like in Orton Gillingham takes many years, at least 2, I think. I mean, 1 year might be,
I think it's
you know,
2.5, something like
but
that.
pretty intense. So, you know, for districts to take that on, and you never know if the teacher will stay, but if the school, if the state can help in making sure people can get the training on their own or before they come to a district, it will help expand our pool of available teachers and paraprofessionals. And, you know, I think there were about 43 points, so just go over the main big ticket items.
Sounds like a big bill.
Well, it is, you know what, and when I heard it last week, the chairs did, you know, they've been working really hard. They had 3 around the state listening tours, 1 on Zoom. I know they've reached out to many superintendents to get their input. And I think it's been very well thought out. Obviously, you know, it can change. We'll get input on Monday, and I'm sure after that, as more people learn about it, and the committee will go back and refine things. So, you know, it's a start to address, how do we address the kind of runaway costs of special education?
Yeah,
You know?
I, if you don't mind, like, first of all, thank you.
Oh, I did it all myself. No, I'm just reporting.
Advocacy, yeah, it's nice to know we have friends in important places, and, you know, Saba and Cece are clearly good friends, you know, but this committee, and this bill in particular, it's comprehensive in its nature, and so, people who've been hanging around will also recognize that some of the proposals are really courageous. You know, that for lots of very good reasons, the special education lobby in Connecticut is really, really strong. And one of the reasons why any conversation about burden of proof type concerns is dead on arrival, and has been for a long time, because there's such intense pushback, and in some places for very good reasons, not here. And so I see some of these things as like a courageous step forward, if nothing else, just putting the issue on the table. And there's tact here too, right? We're not looking to upend the entire thing, but to try to just rebalance the scales a little bit. And so I really am looking forward to really getting into the details, and, you know, you can expect I'll reach out to Rep Con too, and just, you know, I'll share, you know, thoughts. And I know my colleagues will also, because this is something we've been talking about, you know, almost monthly. So thank you. It's tremendous.
They've been working really, really hard on it, and not just this session, the people who've been on education before, you know, I think from the fall, you know, it's been a lot of discussions, and it will be a lot of discussions over the next month, at least until the end of session, until something gets passed. You know,
So just for the process, so this
Mhm.
bill has been introduced and then it goes back to committee?
Yep, so the public hearing will be Monday. Probably just has one public hearing. General, I think all bills just have one. And then it goes back to committee, and then they vote whether to bring it to the floor. A joint favorable where they vote that they voted out of committee, and then leadership and more people, start talking about it before it actually comes to the floor.
So when it goes back to committee, do they start to cut things that they don't think are gonna fly? Or do they reassess the priorities?
Sometimes there's substitute language after the public hearing. If there's comments or tweaks, they will do substitute language, which then makes it a JFS, joint favorable substitute. And then they vote on that. It really depends timing wise. I mean, all bills, the deadline is the 24th. It's next Thursday, 5 p.m. So they'll have the public hearing more than likely. I don't know when they have their committee meeting, whether it be Tuesday or Wednesday. It's actually, I don't know if it's on the calendar yet, and then it really depends how much time and how significant the changes are. But listen, whatever, like we have some bills in finance that, there might be some tweaks, just a word here or there that you'll just do later before it actually becomes a LCO. After, like the bill's there, but you can make changes before, and then obviously you can make changes before it comes to the floor or on the floor.
Yeah.
So that's why they told us, expect to take a hotel room those last 2 weeks. Because those meetings, a lot of these bills might change on the floor right before they come to the floor, so. Yeah, we'll
You
have a
have
lot
to
of
be there.
reading.
So, that's a great piece of insight.
Mhm.
So, just speaking only for myself, like I'm not available to attend the public hearing on Monday. But I would expect that I'd be able to kind of get my thoughts together, by Tuesday to put something in writing
Yeah.
for that committee. So and then to just email whatever that is to the entire committee or
Yeah.
to the chair.
For
first.
Miriam and Jen,
Okay, great.
So, and you can put if you send it to them.
Yeah, I've got to speed that up.
Yeah.
They were great. We had, Jen Leeper, who is the chair of the education committee, and had facilitated the conversation with the rest of the Durkee superintendents a month-ish ago to talk about this. And so, it was fabulous. We took a lot of time, which also just spoke to, how carefully they're listening and, how serious this is. So I was really left that conversation feeling really affirmed
Yeah, it's
that
pretty
something
great.
high quality was going to come out of the committee. And so it's great to see.
Yep. And they're balancing, needs of the whole state too.
Yeah.
But special education is something that every district has the same issues with.
Yep.
Transportation, how do you fund this? Transportation, how do you get the teachers? How do you get the staff? How do you develop in-district programs? I mean, Wilton led the way, on bringing things in-house, taking it back from all the outplacement that we were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's all upside, to that kind of work. So nice to see too that there's the proposal for some financial incentive to continue to do that work. I know it probably won't come up here, but one of the, the common laments we have when kids, when families choose to outplace or we outplace kids, there's a quality fall off. And, some of these places, they focus really intensely on the therapeutic supports, but not the academics. And so when kids come back, we're now catching them up. And so if you can keep them here, you can do both.
Yeah.
So I really support the idea of developing more in-district programs.
And there might have been some talk of in-district and almost cooperative programs between districts because, sometimes there will be kids that, you have 2 of, they have 2 of, and once you get 8, you kind of have that
Critical mass.
to deal with them rather than sending them
Yeah.
out. So,
It's great.
yeah.
So I think, you talked a little bit about like intersections of things. And I think one of the things that's also facing this district and specific to this bill is, facilities and facility improvements and reimbursement for infrastructure improvements. And I know that some surrounding towns get reimbursed more than, I think Norwalk, there are two new high schools, it was an 80% level reimbursement, and ours is about a 22% reimbursement. So I think as we start really kind of tackling our, improvement needs and our facility needs, to really kind of work with you and CC and others to really understand how those formulas come from, how we can work within them, if there's ways to kind of understand that system better and work within it, and maybe provide for alternative avenues or other types of reimbursement scales. I mean, I think of facilities as something that across the board, all our kids throughout the state deserve to be in a building that meets needs, and regardless of income level or tax level by town. So we kind of look forward to tackling that a bit moving in the coming.
Yeah, it's always an issue of money, what the budget is at the state level, at the town level. We heard a lot of testimony on the DRIP, the district repair infrastructure program. And it sounds like a great program, but what astounded me, no,
Yeah.
If you can't access it.
Yeah.
well, that one would have just been a percentage, assuming it goes forward, and I think some of those ideas might be incorporated somewhere else. But when you heard some towns come to you, like, I can see the loop around, the workarounds of, then towns come to depend on this money, because it'd be a set amount of money every year. But, some towns like Waterbury, they're, I asked, I was like, "Oh," or it was Waterbury and then another town, I said, okay, so what would you use this money for, first off? And one guy said, well, we would repair, some mechanics on their ACs that they just haven't been able either to replace, just some mechanics that you're like, it's your air handler system. And Waterbury was like, well, we look at our facilities. I said, what do you mean your facilities? They're outdoor sports facilities. Right now, they ship all their kids out of town to access sports fields. They have no fields because they're in such a state of disrepair. So, there's a lot of districts around the state that you're like, oh, they don't have the field right outside. They can't send their marching band right outside. They can't send their football team right outside. It's basically an away game every day.
time.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that tears apart of the cohesiveness of school life,
Yeah.
of the school day, kids participating, or, transportation home, things like that. So,
So, and I thought that the DRIP concept was a really good one, that for some of the, current school construction reimbursement processes are just, onerous to try to.
well, and I heard that on
Access to those
bonding.
funds.
So in addition to finance, I sit on the bonding subcommittee. So we heard all the schools, between State Department of Education, all the kind of the tech schools, and then higher ed schools come in to pitch what they needed. And, SDE kind of went through their process, and wow, it's onerous for your school construction processes. And if something's wrong, well, you have 5 days to fix it. I kind of want to ask, well, do help districts fix it? I'm looking at their forms, I'm like, do you need all this information? Because it really bogs down the system too. And they're overwhelmed, they have a set amount of staff and constantly taking on more responsibility. So, I think as legislators, we need to be cognizant of how much can, a staff of 10 reasonably do and handle. I think that's why the DRIP was going to be outside SDE. But, there's things that we always look at.
I think in general, as you're talking about like finite resources, and we look at things like, funding special education and facilities and other types of programs. And then there's a continuation of mandates that are then like pushed down to districts that are unfunded. And as our costs increase, on those ends that are mandatory and required, then, you know, the other costs also, we don't receive the same level as reimbursement or help for as of surrounding districts, you know, we get compounded more. And so I think that it's like where we can find ways to, you know, even things out, especially in things that affect all students in the same way throughout the state, is a good place to start.
There was one bill that addresses unfunded mandates. Again, we voted it out of committee. Then the last couple weeks I've been on bonding and finance, so, and then this week everybody was on vacation, so I couldn't text Jen. I'm leaving her alone. So I'll be following up on that to figure out like, where is that gonna go over the next 2 months? Actually, month and a half. It's 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, so circle back with that because I have a project probably for summer that I've been discussing with a couple people, you know, kind of looking, you know, we need to streamline some stuff. And, you know, because when things are still on the books, but they're not necessary to do, you still have to deal with them.
Yeah.
So I think it's something that we should always be taking a look at regulations and figuring out what can we streamline.
Yeah.
Because it all costs money and maybe not actual money, but time.
Usually time.
Time and
Yeah.
labor is
Yeah.
money, so.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank
That
you.
was a lot.
It was?
Yeah, no, it was
Well,
very
I'm glad I spent
informative.
2 hours recreating all my notes because I couldn't find the other ones. I was like, I know I have the printout. It's probably sitting on my desk in
No, but
Hartford.
it's very informative, so
Oh,
thank you
No,
for catching us up.
I'm very glad to be here. I'm very glad to be up there, but, you know, reach out anytime. I think at least half of you have my personal cell phone number.
Yes.
Yeah, don't
We
share.
won't use it. Thank you
We had
so
a few
much.
incidents in a car, so there was that, right? So
Which one?
we
Oh,
had a few times in the car. and,
oh, yeah.
Go hit the
So-
stone wall, Pam. Wait, no, back out. No, Pam, stop.
Yeah, well, thanks. Listen, we don't have much on the agenda, but it's
Yeah.
important. Don't feel like you have to stay.
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
I've tortured her.
How would it
tonight.
look if I leave though? To my dinner? No.
We won't take
It's
much-
fine.
much more
Yes.
time.
Yeah. Thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you so much.
Yeah.
It was a
Thank you.
pleasure to be here. Obviously, reach out anytime. And we shall see you soon. If everybody's going on break next week, forever who you, it sounds like you two might be, or at least you are.
I'll be around.
You'll be around,
Yeah.
okay. It'll be a quiet day, but enjoy your spring break. Have a happy Easter for all who celebrate. And I guess the final night of Passover is also on Sunday. As I found when I invited some friends, they're like, can't do it until 8 PM. I was like, okay, I'm serving Easter dinner at 2, so that's not gonna work. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Howard.
look
Yes,
Yeah.
we'll
forward
be
to
in
seeing
touch.
guys
Thank you
soon.
so much.
Perfect, yep, bye-bye.
Okay.
Yeah, you're up,
I'm
Karen.
super happy
CLA.
to be back here because we are finally bringing that artificially bifurcated curriculum review back into a whole. So I have an update for you in 4 very short acts, one for each grade level span. Those of you who haven't experienced a curriculum review, a typical curriculum review, we don't typically pull out 4 grade levels and do them separately, but to be in compliance with the state mandate, we did that last year. So today I'm going to update you on kindergarten through the high school. We had our curriculum review, last curriculum review committee for 4/12 was Wednesday, the 9th. And the committee recommended, pulled together some recommendations for K-5. So for K-3, they amended a recommendation from last year. So for the 2025-2026 school year, we are recommending that we be in full implementation of EL education in kindergarten through 5th grade. This accelerates the partial implementation plan for kindergarten that was recommended by the K-3 committee last year, and it brings us into full compliance with the law for kindergarten through 3rd grade in the upcoming school year. It also assures continuity of instruction for our fourth graders as they move from third grade into fourth grade. And fifth grade felt a little bit left out and really was like, we're hearing great things from our third grade colleagues. Please, please, please let us do it sooner. So we figured out some conditions that needed to be put in place so that we could adequately support the teachers through that. And we figured it out and are making it happen. So that's great news. We don't do our work in a vacuum though. So in the midst of this, EL Education has made some revisions to their curriculum. They revised the skills block for K2 in 2024. The revisions are nominal. They're mostly organizational. So the modules are for skills block are no longer organized in modules. They're organized in cycles that span all 4 modules. It just makes ease of differentiation for the teacher. Another great revision to the 2024 materials is some updated station rotation materials, which has been pretty burdensome for teachers as they're learning a new program to have to create multiple differentiated stations. So the revisions provide that. For knowledge block, the knowledge block is being revised in kindergarten through 5th grade in 2025. One materials provider has released those revisions already. We're waiting for Open Up Resources to release those revisions. And here's where it gets a little bit dicey. Our current materials provider is Imagine Learning. Some people mistakenly call the curriculum Imagine Learning. The curriculum is EL Education. The materials provider is Imagine Learning. EL Education is a nonprofit organization that partners with multiple materials providers. In this 2024-2025 revision cycle, they have offered exclusive access to KIDM and to Open Up Resources. Imagine Learning, when pressed by me, sent me a canned statement that they will not be revising beyond 2017. So we're a lot of things, but I'm not platform devout. We're curriculum devout and platform agnostic. So we're gonna make some changes there. The curriculum committee is recommending that we leave those changes to the end user. So I will collaborate with each building to make a decision about which materials provider is most accessible for the teachers to ease their implementation. The curriculum stays the same. The materials provider, it's a slightly different presentation. So those are the K2 revisions. The knowledge block revisions are K5. So now I'm going to go a little bit out of order and you'll see why in a minute. I'm going to skip ahead to the 3-5 recommendations. With these revisions, we want to be super respectful of the teacher adult learning pathway. There's a lot to learn. We are shifting philosophies from balanced literacy to structured literacy. Then there's the added layer of learning how to access different instructional materials. So to be respectful to that learning trajectory where the revisions again are nominal, we are recommending that for grades 3 through 5, they implement the revised materials in their 3rd year of implementation. So for grade 3, that is the 2026-2027 school year. They'll be in the 3rd year of implementation. And for grades 4 and 5, the 2027-2028 school year. I know it seems at this moment that, hey, 4-5 hasn't implemented yet. Why aren't we just going with the new materials? And the answer to that is because we've already started training them with the Imagine Learning materials. So we don't want to disrupt their learning by kind of shifting everything all around all at once. Everything all at once has been really hard for the last 4 years. So we're going to kind of pump the brakes on that. Now I'm going to back up and I'm going to go in reverse order for 2nd grade to kindergarten. For 2nd grade, I have come and reported to you before that 2nd grade's having a bit of a bit of a more rough year 1 implementation than our 3rd grade friends are. So to accommodate that, I would like to be able to offer grade 2 the choice of moving to the new revisions in year 2 of implementation if they feel that that is more accessible to them. So we're going to give them the choice of year 2, jump into the new materials for knowledge block next year, and or they can do it in year 3 of implementation, as I would recommend typically. All grades, kindergarten through 2nd, are going to implement the 2024 skills revisions starting next year. And they're super excited about it. It's a little bit like holding the reins back. They're super excited. Can't wait for the materials to come out. Kindergarten and 1st grade have not yet implemented knowledge block, so they're just going to move forward with the 2025 revisions. So they'll move forward with the revisions for knowledge and for skills block next year. But again, K-5 all in for EL education, and the revisions are nominal. The knowledge revisions, I was remiss in this. The knowledge revisions are really offering districts more choice. So there are 4 modules, you'll remember. Module 1 and Module 4 stay largely the same. They got kind of a light facelift based on teacher feedback. Modules 2 and 3, the EL education is going to offer districts 2 choices to either take a humanities pathway or a STEM pathway for each of those modules in each grade. What that allows us to do as a district is start to integrate our curriculum a little bit more, which is going to be fantastic once we get that up and moving. We've been trying to move in that direction for quite some time. So that is the K-5 revisions. That was Acts 1 and 2. That was my longest. Act 3 is grade 6.
Yeah, do you need a recess?
Do you need a recess?
I'm worried about your.
We can get you through a
attention
play
span.
cycle.
I could talk about this all day, ask Kevin. Grades 6 through 8. We worked really hard to come to a recommendation for 6-8 to address the primary need that was identified on March 12th around coherence. I am looking for a kindergarten through 8th grade coherent program. That's what we're replacing. We had a kindergarten through 8th grade coherent program with TC, and I'm looking to continue to build that knowledge through 8th grade. The middle school, the committee and the middle school teachers back at the entire department were able to preview 3 sets of programmatic resources: EL education, Savvas Learning, and Amplify ELA. We ruled out Savvas Learning. We could not reach consensus about Amplify or EL education. And the holdouts were the middle school teachers. So we're going to have to enact, as we did with kindergarten through 3rd grade, our fallback decision-making process. I imagine that on June 4th, when the committee reconvenes, we will have a bit more debate about why coherence K-8 is best for students. And then we will move forward recommending EL education. There was some concern from some committee members that because the middle school teachers weren't excited about EL education, that it might not be the right way to go. But I remained unconvinced that decisions about liking books and for adult comfort, they were just pushing up too hard against what was best for students. So we're going to move forward and explore that a little bit more. And after Wednesday's conversation, I did some more research, and I just can't find any evidence to support that not having a coherent K-8 program is the way to go, particularly when at the high school, one of the high school recommendations, as you'll hear in a minute, is to strengthen the 8-9 transition. If that were strong, it might be a different conversation, but we're not there yet. So stay tuned for 6-8. But the committee did approve the 9-12 recommendations. So they had 4. The first of these is to study the new programmatic resources from the middle school to ensure coherence in grade 9. So you can already hear the high school looking down toward K-8. They need that coherence as well. The second recommendation that the committee approved for 9-12 is to align summative assessments across grades 9 and 10 horizontally. That just means across courses in grades 9 and 10. They're looking to ensure alignment, not just course to course, but also with the standards. The third recommendation is to diversify texts in grade 9. Again, they want to study the Middlebrook program and then audit texts assigned in freshman year as they begin to recommend texts. And finally, their fourth recommendation, they will be launching a feasibility study to offer the humanities model to all freshmen. We're very excited about this recommendation. In year 1, they plan to conduct some empathy interviews and focus groups. They're looking to be in implementation between years 2 and 3. And in year 4, they will study the impact of that decision. That recommendation originated with our student representatives on the committee. And in January 15th, they made a very compelling case that, hey, if these methods are good for honors English, why aren't we doing that for everybody? So it's not a de-leveling situation at this time. We are looking to provide access to interdisciplinary learning in freshman English and social studies for all freshmen. So that's where we are so far. And I think you'll have to see me one more time after that June 4th meeting, but then we will have a coherent K-8. There will be no holes in our plan, and that's going to feel amazing.
I would just like to, questions abound, but I would just like to take a minute because I've been sitting on this curriculum committee. And so I would just like to take a minute to, call out Karen for the tremendous work that she has put into putting this program together, and really her dedication to doing what's right for our kids and making it a program that serves our kids throughout the years in the best way possible. Because it's not just about, the implementation, it's about then once we have it. And I think that sometimes we can get lost in implementation planning and we don't kind of look past about like what happens after that's settled. And we also don't think about how we always have kids going 5th to 6th, and we always have kids going 8 to 9. And we always have kids going 2 to 3.
Yeah.
And so we need to like ensure that those transitions and that coherence across the grades is solid. And then that gives, I think, our teachers the space and the ability to really make the classroom work as rigorous as possible, and to really work to make, the programs as accessible as possible to all our kids. So I think that, while there wasn't so, excitement towards the Amplify versus the EL, I don't think in my kind of reading of what was going on around the room, the differentiation between the two programs did not outweigh the, benefits of what happens when you have coherence across the district. And they're both structured literacy models. And I think we also know that we're also Wilton. And while we work to make sure that all our, curriculum gets settled in a way for all our students and it involves, appropriately over time.
I really think we will have more consensus around that table on June 4th. I had the opportunity to take 2 of the committee members from Middlebrook to see our 3rd grade in action, and they were super impressed with their vocabulary and the quality of their writing in grade 3. So
And
I think we're going to get there quickly.
And I was taken by the high school talking about their need, to have, more of a transition from 8-9, and looking at some of the writing opportunities under EL being more intensive. Also looking at some of the book pathways matching more towards what happens in the high school. And really looking at it being more of like an inquiry-based approach that kind of matches what then goes on later in your upper grades. So I think that there's a solid footing And I do also just around that table, the work that it takes to,
It's
you know,
very impressive. I mean, I echo
make it work.
Ruth's feelings, and just to watch the teachers talk through and think through and sort of walk around and try to, figure this all out with a lot of care and thought and really being mindful of what they want to do with their kids. It's really, I mean, with your leadership, it's been very impressive for me to be on that committee and watch them try to put together something that will work for them, for their kids, so that their kids are successful.
It's a large steering committee with multi-stakeholder voices.
And you have
and it
many
takes a
stakeholders.
Large team
Yes.
to make the important decisions that are right for kids. So thank you, those of you who have participated.
Absolutely. One clarifying question. You mentioned, I think in scene 1 or 2, about there's an ability, was it ability for teachers to choose at the individual teacher level or at the grade level?
I worked on the wording for that like 3 times.
You
because you're
probably
not the
said it
first-
perfectly and I just.
You're not the first person who's asked for this clarification. It's an important one. Absolutely not. That decision will be made with me by building.
Okay.
No one is going to be, and if you're talking about the knowledge pieces, that's a district level decision because it has vertical implications.
Got it. And are there big cost variabilities in terms of which programs are?
That's a little bit premature to say. I am hopeful that it's going to be a little bit less expensive.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's a lot of work you've done.
We've done.
Well,
We've done.
Yeah, and just, I want to come back to the cost implication question. Yes, there are. And, we're moving to a program that relies heavily on consumable materials. And
Right.
that's something that, we had transitioned away from years ago. And so, you're already seeing those costs reflected into our current budget. They were, in last year's budget a little bit.
Right.
And so that'll carry forward for as long as we use these programs unless something changes.
And year one of implementation at each grade level is most expensive because the biggest driver of the cost are the trade books. So we're really working hard to inventory and protect those for as long as they will last in little hands.
No, but I mean, it's really just to see all the moving pieces come together and through the, was in the 3rd grade classrooms and in the second and first, 2nd grade classrooms and just seeing all the pieces, and it's really been a tremendous effort.
Teachers have been working so hard and it's really showing in this, what the students know and can do right now. It's impressive.
No, it really is. And to see the kids sitting and engaged and, working through things and like the inquiry model and really, wrestling with things and grappling with things has just been really tremendous. And I think that similar how we, restructured some of our math pathways, I think we will see that carry through and carry over. And I think that's one thing that makes me kind of excited for there to be kind of that coherence,
Yeah.
because it really sets the stage for it to be about kind of like what's going on in the classroom, the work in the classroom, and not learning a new method or a new model when there's a transition.
And there's a lot of synergy between IM for math and EL education for ELA. So that's beautiful too. And our math teachers at the middle school weren't excited about a back box set of programmatic resources either. And look where they are now. They're number 1 in the state. So I think fostering some communication between those 2 departments at Middlebrook will go a long.
Change is hard.
Also,
Change is hard. So thank you for having me back.
Thank you for all you've been
Thanks, Karen.
doing. Thank
Appreciate
you.
For everything.
Enjoy your break. Have a good holiday. And then I think we just have a few policies to go
Yeah,
through.
so-
First read.
A handful of policies, as Ruth just said, these are first read. We continue to update our policy manual. The first policy for your consideration is, I'm gonna go in my order.
Oh, yeah,
not the
that's
order
fine.
on the agenda.
Yeah.
4120 is the abuse and neglect of disabled adults. This policy speaks to our 18 to 22-year-old student population. The policy does a couple of things. One, it extends the mandated reporter obligation to the students in that age band. And then two, it extends the reporting obligation to all employees beyond our kind of traditional mandated reporters. Right now, if there is suspect of abuse or neglect for this age range, the mandated reporting protocol is to go to the Department of Developmental Services for kind of typically or traditionally or current mandated reporters. For folks who are not traditionally mandated reporters, the obligation is to report to me. So brand new, we'll have to do some training around that once that policy is in place. That's that one. The next one, 4118.5, employee use of district computer systems. I was sharing with Ruth and Lori, at some point, I'm convinced we already have this policy in place, and just I've talked myself into this idea that when we did the changeover years ago, we either lost it or we had a combined policy that's now only speaking to students. So regardless, this policy directly addresses staff use of district issued technology. And so it specifies appropriate use criteria and also notifies employees that they don't have an expectation of privacy while using district issued computer technology.
This is also a model policy from the Shipman
Yeah,
Goodwin Law.
yeah. So every single one of these I pulled from the Shipman model handbook. 6172.6 addresses remote learning and credit for online courses. The credit for online courses portion of that policy this is really just policy catching up with practice. We've offered access to online courses for years and years. Back in 2014, I introduced Virtual High School, which is probably the largest premier high school course catalog in the country. And so every year, you'll see it in the budget, there's $8,000 or $10,000 set aside, and students will often take courses that, they either got locked out of here because we didn't have enough students to run, or it's a course that they're interested in that we just simply don't offer. And so that's been in place for a long time. So that portion of the policy just again speaks to criteria, right? So it's got to be run by a teacher who's certified in our state or another state. It's got to meet kind of our quality criteria and so on. The second piece speaks to remote learning. A couple of years ago, the legislature adopted a statute that allowed school districts to adopt remote learning programs. And so Norwalk is currently running one. For the school years 22 and 23, those programs were intended only for high school age students. In this most current year, the statute expanded to include remote learning programs, K-12. We don't have any current plans to develop a remote learning program, but I sure would like the flexibility. And so this is something I shared with these guys earlier. This was something that was on Frank Compar's to-do list, and we weren't in alignment about what it was going to look like, who was going to serve, how it was going to come to life. And so we just needed more time. The last two pertain to student athletes. 5131.61 speaks to chemical health for student athletes. This is also policy catching up with practice. And so it's in accordance with CIAC rules, NCAA rules, and just lays out what happens if students are in possession, and what should happen if an adult staff member or coach becomes aware or suspects that a student might be using. And then the last one, 4115.2 is also policy catching up with practice. This is pertains to concussion management and training for athletic coaches. All of our coaches receive concussion protocols. And so we have very clear protocols for our student athletes. We're fortunate to have also an athletic trainer on site. And so if coaches have questions, there's plenty of available resources for them to support our student athletes.
Do they wear special helmets now? The football players or
the newer helmets do have additional padding and sure my program does. They have these kind of socks that they'll put over the helmets. I'm not sure if I don't think our high school is using them.
Okay.
But our helmets, we send them out and they are reconditioned and recertified annually. So are our lacrosse helmets.
Kevin, on remote, can we,
Yeah.
on the remote learning, what do you see as the benefits of having the flexibility? Is it more around having the flexibility if we find ourselves in a situation where remote learning becomes a necessity to carry out just the
Not
at
necessarily.
scale? Like, why
Yeah.
would we want to have a policy for kindergartners to remotely?
So, we have cases where, students might be medically fragile and can't come to school. And so we don't necessarily have a program other than, offering tutorial or setting up some third party possibility to educate those kids that have issues like that in a meaningful way. It doesn't happen often, but, we sometimes have to expel students too. And we don't necessarily have a program that's readily accessible, that's, run by us that they can just drop into. So, those are two kind of simple examples. There might be other opportunities, that emerge, I think maybe on this one, we send kids, who go ski competitively for 6 months of the year. A remote learning program might be an opportunity for them to continue with their Wilton education instead of having to withdraw and enroll in a different school. So, those would be some opportunities, just as simple examples. I'm sure there are others. I would love to get to a place where, if we had, multiple snow days or inclement weather days where kids couldn't be in school, rather than having to tack those days on the end of the year, being able to revert to, remote instruction. We did that very seamlessly a few years ago at Cider Mill. It was, a little earlier than this part of the year, a few years ago. And that's far better quality instruction than on June 18th, 19th, 20th, whatever the case may be. This doesn't fully address that. Like the state's really had kind of cold feet. But I'd like to work toward, a system where we could do it and try to, lobby the state to give us and maybe other districts that the same opportunity. So I think, having the policy in place, in this model, that remote learning is conjoined with, credit for online classes. And so, that's not the most important piece of the policy today. But I think it's something that we can grow into.
Another example to me is when Cider Mill lost electricity, and the kids were, going to the high school for the day and part to Middlebrook for
That's
the
exactly
day.
what I was remembering.
Yes.
Yeah, I just misremembered.
And to have been able to have kept them home for 2 days and then done the work at home would have made, made a difference.
In that scenario, we were here in a meeting. You guys were on the board. Pam, you were also on the board. And Jose walked in the door, probably mid-meeting and said, "What do you want to do? Cider Mill doesn't have power." So kind of on the spot, made the decision to just,
It was pretty cool how so Cider Mill pulled it together and those kids went to Middlebrook and Middlebrook had it all. I mean, I thought it was really great.
They did a great job on that first day of going to remote learning. But we had to make up that day per state statute,
Right.
which was, even though it was a really quality instructional day. The second day we were closed when they were all over the place. We had, an army of kids here, an army of kids at Middlebrook. We made it work, but it wasn't optimal.
So it seems like the real intent is trying to address like acute, urgent situations to be able to provide remote learning, as opposed to, you just think about like, I don't know, years and years and years when, if none of us are involved for whatever reason, like, just wouldn't want to open a door where it becomes a regular practice to say, yeah, my kid's, third grade, just not gonna go to school and has the option to remotely learn.
Sure. Yeah, I think.
And like us, I'm not sure that that's part of the mission we're trying to support.
No.
So I want to make sure there were no loopholes that we didn't think through.
None that I'm aware. I mean, there are state guidelines around, definitionally around what remote learning means and what remote programs are. And so, a parent couldn't call tomorrow and say, I'm gonna, figure out how my child's gonna remote learn. That door's not open. Like, we have to have a program, a curriculum, or your, successors would have to approve it. So yeah, there are lots of steps that we need to take. To the point you just made, like, my own personal interest is having a greater opportunity for flexibility.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Any other questions on the policies we just ran through? And there'll be a second read for discussion and approval at our next meeting. And then next up is committee assignments. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to bring to the table. First, there's going to be a short-lived tri-board infrastructure fund community. And that committee is going to lay the groundwork for the, the alternative capital resource to support Wilton's infrastructure needs. The Board of Finance has committed, I believe, $375,000 to start the fund out of this year's budget. And the committee will probably meet like 3 times or so. I know Matt Raimondi put for our Board of Finance, it'll be Matt Raimondi and Tim Birch on the committee. For the Board of Selectmen, it will be Tony Boucher and Ross Tartell. And then for the Board of Education, I will sit on it, and Lori will sit on it as well. And it'll set the structure and the processes and procedures about how that fund will work moving forward. And the fund is limited to just infrastructure, so it's just municipal and town and school buildings. I guess school buildings are really municipal buildings, so the distinction is,
Keep reminding everybody.
yes,
Yeah.
the distinction is,
Yes, they are.
in name only, not in meaning.
Without difference.
Yeah, distinction without difference. That's the catchphrase I was looking for. Thank you. So that will probably kick off about next week, and hopefully by the time the school year is done, it will be settled and ready to go. The second committee, committee assignments I just wanted to discuss is that there's been discussion of reconstituting the TSNAP committee. In June, I believe, is the time frame that is being looked at. Pat has agreed to continue serving on that committee. The charge of that committee had been 2 board members from each of the primary boards. So I'm going to serve with Pat on that committee as well. Kevin isn't a board member, so while he will be on the committee, it's not as in a capacity as a board member. But what I have expressed concerns over is that we ensure that the members of the TSNAP committee, that their time and their energy is put to the best use and is respected. So given the scope of work that's in front of us as a town, I think it would be important that prior to that committee meeting, again, there is a really clear written understanding of what the purpose of the committee is, its scope of work, and also what its deliverable product is and on what time frame it is. And given the needs in front of us, it would be prudent that that be looked at as a 1-year and 5-year time horizon. That, the recommendations from that committee are not looked at just bonding for 1 year and one-off projects, because the projects and the work in front of us really need more comprehensive planning and understanding. And I think that we saw that with the way some of the bonding and the understanding of how projects and prioritization worked in with this year's committee, and not understanding how work 1 year will then affect future years out. I think does a disservice to the overall planning horizon. So I have, asked that that be completely kind of mapped out and understood. And then when TSNAP reconvenes, there would be some type of organizational committee meeting within that committee to really set the understandings and the mutual agreements of what's going to be coming out of that. So hopefully that'll be rolled out, in the coming weeks as well, coming from the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, that's what I'm gonna ask. So that the action on that is on the Board of Selectmen to formally put forth the charge of that.
Right.
Yeah, it's their committee.
It's their committee, yeah, to formally put forth the charge. I know there's interest in that committee continuing from the Board of Selectmen. They just appointed Kim Healy to sit on that committee, and they also appointed a community member, and Jeff Rudishauer, to sit on that committee. A former chair of the Board of Finance. So I think that I don't know, I know that there has been a commitment, I believe, from the Board of Finance that Matt and Rudy would continue on that committee. I don't know if other community members that have been sitting on that committee have decided to re-up their commitment as well. But putting some structure and process and understanding, I think, would be really important to making the most out of everybody's time and commitment, and really do a service to the needs that are facing our town.
Yep. Amen. Do we know how will those two committees that we just talked about be expected to work with one another? Or
They're not.
Or
They're not.
they're
It's-
totally, I mean, I know they're separate committees, but is the fund funding stuff completely separate from what TSNAP would identify, or are they?
No, so this, I mean,
Related.
the initial committee is really just to set up the kind of the rules around.
The
how
rules
funds will be
around it.
accessed. I think as part of TSNAP's deliberation, funding streams would have to be named, so what would be proposed for bonding, what would be
Yeah, okay.
proposed for cash.
Yeah.
So that's where I
Yeah.
think you can see the interplay.
Yeah, so the interplay would be after the fact. This is just setting up the structure of how the fund works. So how would access to the money be achieved, and what would that process look like, and how would those recommendations be made along those lines?
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, so I think that, part of my, I would hope that part of the kind of understanding about what the scope of work is under TSNAP is like committing, resources and availability to that committee to really understanding different funding streams and possibilities, and, what, bonding capacity is, what bonding looks like, how it works, to really kind of set the stage of, how do we achieve the amount of work that's sitting in front of us in a responsible and deliberate manner.
A lot of work.
It's a lot, it's a lot.
It's time.
But we're Wilton, we can do hard things.
We can do it.
Oh, sure.
We
Yes.
just need a very clear map of what is
Yeah.
expected, right?
Yes.
We can't toil around for
Yeah.
4 meetings wondering what our remit is.
We
So-
Yeah.
communicated that
Yeah,
message.
we
Yeah,
committed,
no, I know,
yeah.
I know. you
Yeah.
guys did,
Yeah.
So,
And an understanding also of like priority setting, and then kind
Yeah.
of really taking those recommendations under advisement and, a serious way.
Yeah,
Because we have a map from Eric Heyer. Do we not?
I wouldn't,
I wouldn't,
a map wouldn't be the
No,
best
but-
description,
but
but we know what.
we know the
need to
scope of the
do.
work.
Yes,
Yes.
for
Put it that
sure.
way.
yeah,
We have the scope of the work and what needs to get done.
Right.
And
Yes.
it's a matter of implementing and making sure that it gets
Yeah.
done.
yeah, well, putting projects together, figuring out the best way to move forward,
Yeah, I think.
yeah,
the
scaling it
priority-
appropriately, yeah,
Scope planning. Yeah, and obviously funding.
yes. Because unfortunately, it's not free. Any questions on the committee's comments from the public?
Lindsay McKay, 87 Old Kings Highway. Thank you so much for all the hard work that's been done on the meeting program. Very, very excited for this next step for Wilton. And also I would say thank you to Karen. She's been on the front lines of this. And very excited that we'll be using the assessment DIBELS 3 times a year for all students K-3 next year, which I think will also just help with all of this. So thank you so much for all the hard work.
Any other comments from the public? Hearing none, I just look for future information. We had a Board of Education meeting, regular meeting on May 1st. Then the Wilton Annual Town Meeting will be on May 6th. I encourage full community and board, well, the board members will be there, but full community participation following the meeting on May 6th. Voting occurs and then adjourned voting again that Saturday. This is where the town gets a say on the budget resolutions and the bonding referendums. So it is important for everyone to be there and support in support of the budgets and the projects in front of us. And then we have another meeting on the 15th and then one on June 5th.
So that's Saturday, the 10th is the second voting.
Is
opportunity,
the
right?
adjourned voting opportunity, yes. And I believe it even runs, I believe it, you know what? I'm not gonna say what the hours are. We'll check it at the next meeting because I don't wanna give anybody false information. Yes.
It's all day.
It's all day. Yes, it does run all day, but I don't know whether it starts at 6 or. Meeting adjourned at 8:21.
Thank you.
Next week, everybody.